Should we begin?
I am all set to go, have taken attendance. And Eric Callahan, I'll record him as being here.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so then let's go ahead with our meeting. I assume there are no citizen petitions?
Nope, there's nobody here.
Okay, and so the next item is approval of the minutes, which would be for our February meeting. Anybody have any corrections, comments on those, or want to make a motion to approve them?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Great, all in favor, say aye, raise
Aye.
your hand,
Aye.
do something. Okay, thank you. So that's passed unanimously. Communications and bills, do we have anything for that, Greg?
No.
Okay, great. So we'll move on to reports. I assume there are no consultant reports. If there are, you can tell me, or changes in sewer use list.
No.
And next is actually the attorney's report, but I assume we'll talk about the attorney part of things later.
Correct.
Okay, so then we're on to the Public Works Director report. So
Okay.
that's, go for it, Greg, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I just have a couple items. I think it's the last time I mentioned that we gave the town council a tour of the treatment plant on February 19th. We had 5 counselors show up, an RTM member and the town manager. Spent Saturday morning for a couple hours going through the plant. I think they were all pretty impressed with it. Harry gave a great tour to everybody, and I think they all appreciated, what really goes on at the plant. And then the second item is I had sent everybody an email that at our next meeting on April 12th, we'll have Attorney Rich Cody from Sussman Shapiro give some training to us on the roles of the WPCA and also, running an effective meeting. And that'll be on April 12th. And so if you have any topics you want him to cover, just shoot me an email, over the next few weeks so I can get that to him. Otherwise, it'll just be, I'll just say it's going to be kind of a general discussion. I know, Hugh, you had given me a few things, so I'll send that along to him. But if anybody else has any other issues they want to cover, just let me know. He did ask if that meeting was going to be in person or on Zoom. I think he was kind of hoping it was going to be in person because it might be a little easier for him, but to do the training. So, but I'll leave that up to you guys, whether you want to meet in person or stick with the Zoom. And that's all I had.
Okay, thanks. So actually, I was going to raise the same issue in the chairman's report. I didn't know where it fit in the agenda. So maybe we'll come back to that and do Harry's facility report. I have a few comments to make in the chair's report, and we can talk about how the meeting will be for the next meeting. Is that good?
Sure.
So Harry, you want to run through your situation?
Sure. For February, the plant was running pretty well. No serious issues. We performed well, met all our permit requirements, met the nitrogen requirement for the month. So no issues there. Our new mechanic trainee is he's doing well. He's completed eligibility requirements to sit for the class 1 exam, and he'll be scheduling that soon. The pump station renovation projects they're still bogged down a little bit. Mainly well, not mainly, but I mean it's the issue with getting equipment, getting parts. They have started with the Goss Cove pump station setting up for the bypass. So they're getting ready to get some work done there. Gravel Street Gravel Street pump station is still waiting on parts and equipment and ironing out a couple of things. And Winford Cove is still in design process. The outfall truncation project that we're doing for EB, that's completed. So we ceased flow overnight of the 9th and the 10th. And then we just had 1 hour shutdown on the following Monday. That went smooth. And I think that's it. Got some data there for the month in the report. So is there any questions on any of that? Or?
Thanks, Harry. Anybody have anything? No. Okay.
All right.
So next is the chair's report, and I've never had a report. I'm not sure I have a report now. I have a few comments, and so, you know, one of which you already know. You know, if people have thoughts or they have comments. So thanks to Harry and Greg for doing that tour for the town councilors. Dave?
About a report for the chair. It used to be that we had statewide meetings. I forget what they called it, but sort of council of water pollution control authorities. And since the pandemic, I haven't heard any more about them. Have you gotten messages about such things?
I haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Greg, do you know anything
No,
about
I have
that?
not. No, I don't
Dave,
know
do you have the
about that.
contact information yourself?
No, I probably do somewhere, but not in my hand.
So
well, it's
not something that you passed on when you handed over the reins?
I did report on it a few times. I got to say what it was just sort of a grab bag of people from around the state telling if they had any news. Several of them were people that lived around lakes or something that were summer things, and they got to be crowded enough, so they decided they were going to put in a sewage plant and various adventures about that. It's not. I was mainly curious. I don't think it's anything that holds any great useful information for us, but I just wondered.
Okay, well, if you check back through your emails and find something, feel free to send it along my way or to Carrie, and we'll.
Okay, I'll look into it.
Don't have to do it this minute. So I didn't come on the 19th because I thought Harry had given me a great tour when I first joined the board, but later it occurred to me that it would have been good to go to meet the town councilors who I've never met. So as it happened, I went to the meeting about the data center this past Saturday, and so there were about 4 or 5 councilors there. I introduced myself. Also, the town manager was there, the mayor. And so I introduced myself, told people that I had succeeded Dave as the chair of the committee, and Dave, people certainly knew who you were and had good things to say. So, so anyway, I've now met a number of the councilors and the and folks in the town manager, which sort of raises another issue, which is I have no idea. Obviously, Greg, you're reporting to the town manager, and so keeping him informed. But you know, I'm thinking of the topic that we'll get to next. You know, how we go about informing or deciding or not deciding, whatever, to inform town council as well as the town manager, whether that's up to us or that's up to the town manager. So, but you know, obviously, sort of depending on how things go, this is an issue that could get some fair amount of publicity depending upon how, and have a very substantial public relations aspect depending on, you know, how different folks respond and handle it.
Yeah. Well, it seemed to me that it was one of these things where if everything's going well, nobody knows who the heck you are. But if something's going wrong, then everybody knows. So
exactly.
I wasn't eager for it.
So anyway, that communications issue, part of why I raised all these process issues is, you know, undoubtedly sort of specific to my background. I spent 7 or 8 years on the Science Advisory Board of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, including both chairing one of the standing committees and chairing an ad hoc committee. And obviously, federal committees like that operate under the federal FACA, the Federal Advisory Committee Act. And so there are a lot of rules and processes that we have to follow. And so I'm sort of, not sure what things, obviously, you know, FACA doesn't apply here at all, but issues of FOIA and you know, how we run things for the public. And as Dave just said, when everything's quiet and we're just hearing regular reports, nobody's going to be interested. But so anyway, that's why I've been pushing. And you know, if people feel it's not a good use of their time, please certainly say something. I just figured it was better if we all came to an understanding together, although it may be mostly me who's sort of wondering what to do.
This sounds fascinating. And if there's maybe a 3 or 4 or 5 page description of what the committee does and how it might impact us that you have, that would be, I'd like to get a copy of it. But
well, that's the purpose of our meeting next month.
Yeah, no, Dave, the Science Advisory Board for EPA isn't relevant except in the sense of the sort of rules that we had to follow for doing things in public.
Oh.
To give you one small example, we were not supposed to reply all to emails because under an interpretation of FACA, having emails amongst more than 50% of committee members was having a committee meeting. And so,
wow.
Even if we didn't talk to each other.
Just emails. So, you know, anyway, so, you know, again, a lot of that may be sort of specific to my background and folks like John, who have been here for quite a while, and Dave, you know, how you all function in the past, you know, you may be well aware. So I'll just mention, sort of related again, I put together an Excel spreadsheet of all our meetings for the last 2 years because I needed some way to find where the information was, which I had filed by meeting date. And I would be happy to share it with folks, but it's just my notes from the minutes. And I don't want it somehow, you know, it isn't word for word what's in the minutes, which would be the official record. And so I haven't sent it out partly because I'm almost done double checking it, but also because, you know, I didn't want it turning into something that's a town record of some issue, but I created it because it was useful for me. I think possibly it would be useful for others. So,
have you passed it to the town management of any place?
No, it's just essentially my notes about what's in each, but you know, it's in Excel. So I have a column on, you know, beard and mystic cheese, or a column on the truncation of the EB outflow. So I know which meetings it came up and a little bit about what was, you know, discussed at that meeting. Okay. So I think the last thing is the ordinance, that I have some questions and issues around that. Well, last thing, actually, I have a couple more things. But I think the time to address those are either in our next agenda item or, after we have this training in April. And then I think I would like to recommend that we meet in person our next meeting, but perhaps we could be in a bigger room than the room that we had been using at the town hall annex. And I'm certainly open to comments, both from the other WPCA members as well as from town staff. But it sounds like, Greg, you from the, conveyed that the lawyer thought it would be valuable for us to just be able to talk. So we need to decide about that. And then next we're going to go to the next agenda item. And I have some questions around this potential executive session that we need to talk about. And then there's a text for a motion that that Greg provided me that I'm happy to read at that point. But should we decide about our next meeting, Zoom or in person?
Hugh, if I could just comment, the last time we talked about doing in-person meetings, I did check on those meeting rooms and all the other rooms were occupied at the same time we were meeting. I can check again. I'd be more than happy to do that.
Okay, so let's assume we could end up in the room
Small
that
room.
we,
right,
the small room.
Or move it to a later time.
Yeah, that's the other question, I guess, is I think at some point somebody had said if we went back to meeting in person, they needed the time to be later. So
I'm
anyway.
comfortable in that. I'm comfortable in the original room.
Okay, and you're good with the 5:30 as a time, or?
Sure.
Okay, John?
I'm fine with that as well.
Okay.
You want a motion?
Dave? Do we need a motion to meet in person, or can we
No, I don't think so. You just get census. But Carrie, if you could check on room 1, because that's the council is meeting there on Tuesday nights. And right now they're in the senior center, so it may be available.
I'll check again.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, yes, let's have it in person by all means. And as chairman, you figure it out.
Okay. All right. So anything else that anybody wants to say before we move on to the next agenda item? No? Okay. So the next agenda item is the update on Beard Brewery and Mystic Cheese. And it was recommended that we go into executive session. I guess, again, because I'm new to all of this, I want to understand before we go into executive session what it means to go into executive session. I assume it's intended to allow us to discuss, attorney privilege things, but I assume it means we stop recording. Are there no minutes taken during that time? Exactly what does it mean to be in the executive session?
Correct. It means we go into basically, there's no, you have to announce who's going to go into it, which is the WPCA, Eric Callahan, who's with us, myself and Harry, and there's no meetings, no recording. And it's, and that's it. I don't know if Eric, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, there's certain provisions of FOIA, which starts at Connecticut General Statute 1-200, that allows you to go into executive session to have a discussion with me that would be attorney-client privileged, that doesn't require it to be discussed in an open meeting. So the purpose of tonight's executive session is to discuss a attorney-client privilege document about your high pollutant concentration usage charge within the ordinance.
Right. Okay, and I'm comfortable with that, but I do have one other meeting and question, and then somebody was going to speak. We'll come back to them in a minute. And that is, there are a number of issues that are obviously raised by this situation, but maybe sort of generic in the sense. And so I guess what I'm wondering is, I mean, if something were to come up, for example, the measurement issue. And we were told one interpretation, and I have a section that I want to ask about in the ordinance. But so I guess what I'm wondering is, after executive session, if we feel we need it, do we have some way that we can sort of restate any sort of generic things that are not specific to this, communication, the draft communication that's attorney privileged?
Well, can't you just declare an executive session and then we're through with it? Declare that executive session ended and be back to a general meeting?
I assume so, but I just want to make sure.
John,
please.
Yeah, I thought I understood you to say that what you wanted to do after the executive session is to sort of summarize whatever might have taken place in the executive session that wasn't covered by attorney-client privilege, which if that's what you were getting at or something along those lines, I don't really think it's necessary. I think when we're talking to our lawyer, we can ask him questions about how how we should go about doing certain things from a legal perspective, and that anything we get into would be covered by that privilege. You can't start parsing it where part of it is and part of it isn't. At least not in my experience. I mean, so I would suggest that we don't need to do that. Now, after the meeting, if we have to make a motion to actually do something, like for instance, authorize the attorney to send a demand letter, yes, that's something that maybe we would have to do, on the record. But, other than that, I don't really think we have to sort of, try to parse out what is and what isn't covered by a privilege, or what should be put on the record as far as what was discussed. I don't think that's a good idea. And if that's what you were thinking about.
So what you don't think is a good idea is having a closed meeting at all?
No. I'm fine with the executive session. What I'm saying is that after it's over, and we don't need to then sort of say, okay, and during the executive session, we discussed this, which we should put on the record as a public thing. I don't think that's necessary. Whatever goes on during the executive session is, presumably privileged, and we just leave it that way. I don't know what Attorney Callahan thinks about that, but maybe we can ask him. But I think that's pretty much the way we should look at it.
I agree with everything you just said, Mr. Wisbicki.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, when I spoke to a client, I figured anything I said to them was privileged. I didn't have to start to say to myself, well, this part isn't, unless I was conspiring with them to break the law, which I never did. Then it was all privileged.
Right, and I have no problem with that for the things that are specific to this communication. My concern is that at least this one general issue of whether the ordinance does in fact allow us to require measurements. And my read of section 15129J is that it says that the director can require measurements. And we were given the communication from the town attorney at our last meeting indicating that we couldn't require, I don't know, a manhole, or, you know, that there wasn't. So maybe it was how we asked the question.
Right, but that's exactly.
I want to understand this, because I want to understand what it is we could be asking people. And it's not just applicable to this case, it's generally applicable.
Right, but that's exactly the kind of question that you do ask your lawyer, and it's exactly the kind of back and forth that's privileged when your lawyer is giving you legal advice regarding an issue that you're facing. And after, you know, if we decide based on the attorney's advice, or we decide not to take his advice and do something he doesn't want, you know, if we decide to actually do something, that's a different thing. If we decide to send a letter and we take a position in the letter, obviously the position in the letter will speak for itself. But we don't have to, after speaking to our lawyer, try to parse out what is and what isn't privileged. It's all privileged. That's the point. Because
okay,
he's giving
so
you legal.
let's
if you
just
ask
go
him
in.
An ordinance.
I will accept your viewpoint. I'm not sure I agree, because, you know, one of the concerns that gets raised about executive session is it becomes a way to discuss anything and everything out of the public. But for now, let's just proceed forward. And if anything afterwards I have concerns about, I'll try to bring it up at the end of the executive session with the attorney here, and y'all can advise me as to how to think about it. Okay. So I have this motion that says, I hereby move that the members of the Town of Groton Water Pollution Control Authority, Director of Public Works Greg Hanover, Assistant Director of Public Works Harold Clark, and Town Attorney Eric Callahan go into executive session pursuant to General Statute Section 1-210B10 and General Statute Section 1-206E for the purpose of reviewing an attorney-client privilege document related to the high pollution concentration usage charge. So I assume we need a second and to vote on that as a motion to go into executive?
Correct.
Okay, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Or raise your hands. I think we're all in favor. Okay, so I assume we're now in the executive session. So
yeah, hold on, Hugh. Let me I'm gonna stop the recording.
Right, that's what